Commander Jake Harrison floated in front of the main display screen aboard the New Horizon monitoring station. The massive orbital platform hung in space between Earth and Mars, its sensors constantly watching for any signs of trouble. Jake had been running this shift for 6 months now, and most days were quiet. Too quiet for his liking. The soft beeping of an incoming signal made him turn toward the communications console. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was already working at her station, her fingers dancing across the controls. Her face showed confusion as she tried to clean up the weak transmission. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Amy said. She adjusted her headset and frowned. "It's not coming from any human ship or station. The signal is very weak and breaking up." Jake pushed himself over to her station using the handholds built into the walls. "In zero gravity, every movement had to be planned. Can you boost the signal?" he asked. Amy worked for several minutes, running the transmission through different filters. Slowly, the static began to clear. What came through the speakers made both of them freeze. The voice was not human. It spoke in clicks and musical tones that no human throat could make. But underneath the alien sounds, there was something universal. Fear, desperation, pain. "That's definitely not one of ours," Jake said quietly. He activated the recording system. "Keep working on it. I want every word crystal clear." Over the next hour, Amy used every tool available to clean up the signal. She ran it through translation. Programs that Earth had developed for their few alien contacts. Slowly, words began to form on her screen. "Help us." "Ships burning ... Krex attack without warning. Colony vessels defenseless. Children aboard ... Please respond." Jake felt his blood run cold. The Villani were one of only 3 alien species that Earth had made contact with. They were peaceful traders who traveled in large family groups. Their ships were basically flying cities, but they had no weapons. They were completely helpless. If someone attacked them— "Amy, how old is this signal?" Jake asked. She checked her instruments. "Based on the distance and transmission lag, this message is about 18 hours old." 18 hours, Jake repeated. He thought about the Villani ships he had seen during the first diplomatic meetings. Huge, beautiful vessels filled with families. If they were under attack 18 hours ago, they might already be dead. Amy continued. Working on the signal, more words appeared on her screen. Signal coming from the Kepler 442 system. That's where the Villani said they were heading to establish their new trading post. "Who are the Krex?" Jake asked. The name was not familiar. Amy pulled up the alien contact database. "Here they are, the Krex hegemony. We have very little information about them. Our first contact team met them briefly about 2 years ago. The report says they were aggressive and seemed to think other species were beneath them." Jake read over Amy's shoulder. The report was short but disturbing. The Krex had demanded that humans prove their worth before being allowed to trade. When the human diplomats refused, the Krex had simply left. No violence, but the message was clear. They believed in might makes right. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Carter at Solar Defense Command," Jake ordered. "Priority 1. While Amy set up the communication link, Jake continued listening to the Villani distress call. More fragments were coming through as the signal processing improved. The picture they painted was horrifying. The Krex had arrived at the Villani colony site with a massive fleet. They had not tried to communicate or negotiate. They had simply started firing. The Villani had tried to surrender, but the Krex were not interested in prisoners. They seemed to be destroying the ships for sport, but there was something else in the message that caught Jake's attention. The Villani specifically mentioned Earth. They were calling for human help because they had heard stories. Stories that humans came from a dangerous world. Stories that humans might be strong enough to fight the Krex. The communication link to Earth finally connected. Admiral Ben Carter's weathered face appeared on the main screen. At 62 years old, Carter had seen more space combat than anyone else in the human fleet. His gray hair and steady eyes gave him an air of calm authority. "Jake, what's so urgent?" "That you're using priority channels?" Carter asked. "Sir, we've intercepted a distress call from the Villani. They're under attack by something called the Krex hegemony. Jake sent the cleaned-up recording to Earth. Carter listened to the transmission twice before speaking. How reliable is this translation? Amy ran it through 3 different programs. They all say the same thing. The Villani are asking specifically for our help, Admiral. They think we might be able to fight these Krex. Carter was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him thinking, weighing options. I'm calling an emergency session of the Terran Council. This could be bigger than just helping the Villani. If this Krex group is willing to attack peaceful traders, they might come after us next. What are your orders, sir? Jake asked. Keep monitoring all channels. If you receive any more transmissions from the Villani or anyone else in that system, I want to know immediately. And Jake ... start preparing our response teams. If we're going to help the Villani, we need to move fast. The transmission ended, leaving Jake and Amy alone with the continuing distress calls. Amy had managed to clear up more of the signal, and the news was getting worse. The Villani were reporting that their escort ships had been destroyed. Their main colony vessels were damaged and losing power. They had maybe 6 hours before their life support failed completely. Commander, Amy said quietly, there's something else. I've been analyzing the background of this transmission. There are other signals mixed in. I think the Krex are broadcasting their attack to other ships in their fleet. They're bragging about it. Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Villani were gentle people who had never hurt anyone. They traded in art and music and stories. The idea of someone hunting them for sport made him sick. On Earth, Admiral Carter was already meeting with the Terran Council. Dr. Lisa Park, the xenobiologist who had worked with the Villani during First Contact, was being brought in to provide intelligence. The debate would be short. Earth had never backed down from a fight, especially when innocent people needed help. The Krex hegemony had made a mistake. They had heard that humans came from a dangerous world, but they had not understood what that really meant. They were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why humans were the last species anyone should want as enemies. Image. Description for Leonardo AI. A massive orbital space station floating in the darkness between Earth and Mars, with glowing windows and rotating sections. In the foreground, a human commander in a blue uniform floats in zero gravity inside the station's command center, looking at glowing holographic displays showing alien star maps and distress signals. Multiple screens show alien text and waveform patterns. Earth is visible in the background as a blue marble, while Mars appears as a small red dot. The scene has dramatic lighting with blue and white glows from the technology, creating a sense of urgency and tension in the deep space setting. 3 days after the Villani distress call reached Earth, Captain Ryan Walsh stood on the bridge of the destroyer UTS Guardian. His ship was racing toward the edge of Krex space, moving faster than any human vessel had ever traveled in this direction. The Guardian was Earth's most advanced scout ship, built for speed and stealth rather than heavy combat. Ryan checked his instruments again. They were still 12 hours away from their target coordinates. Admiral Carter had given him a simple mission. Get close to Krex territory, gather intelligence, and report back. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. The fate of the Villani might depend on what his crew discovered. Captain, we're picking up scattered debris fields ahead, reported Lieutenant Tom Brady from the sensor station. Looks like the remains of several ships. Ryan moved to look at the display. The wreckage was spread across thousands of kilometers of space. His heart sank as he recognized the artistic curves and organic designs of Villani construction. Any survivors? Tom worked his controls for several minutes before shaking his head. No life signs, sir? But I'm detecting some automated distress beacons still transmitting. Put us alongside the largest piece, Ryan ordered. I want to see what happened here. As the Guardian moved through the debris field, the crew could see the devastating efficiency of the Krex attack. The Villani ships had been torn apart by weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum destruction. There were no clean cuts or precise strikes. The attackers had wanted these ships to suffer. Captain, called out Emma Stone from the intelligence station, I'm detecting an intact data core in that section of hull. If I can access their records, we might learn more about the attack. Emma was one of Earth's best intelligence officers. She had spent years studying alien technology and could crack most security systems. Ryan gave her permission to attempt the data recovery. While Emma worked, Ryan continued scanning the area. The debris told a story of one-sided slaughter. The Villani had tried to flee, but their ships were too slow. They had tried to hide behind asteroids, but the Kreks had hunted them down methodically. "Got it," Emma announced after an hour of work. "I'm downloading their sensor logs now." The information that came through made everyone on the bridge go silent. The Kreks fleet was massive. Over 300 ships of various sizes, from small fighters to battleships larger than anything Earth had ever built. But it was not just the size of the fleet that worried Ryan, it was their behavior. The Kreks had not simply destroyed the Villani and left. They had taken prisoners. Hundreds of Villani had been loaded onto slave ships. The sensor logs showed the Kreks using captured aliens as forced labor, making them repair damaged ships and build new weapons. "There's more, Captain," Emma said, her voice tight with anger. The Kreks databases contain detailed files on dozens of species. They classify each one by military threat level and economic value. Most species are marked for slavery or extermination. Ryan felt his stomach twist. What about humans? Emma's fingers flew across her console, searching through the alien files. When she found the entry for Earth, her face went pale. "Captain, you need to see this." The file appeared on the main display. Earth was classified as an apex death world with a threat rating of maximum. The Kreks had detailed information about human physiology, psychology, and military capabilities. They knew about Earth's high gravity, dangerous wildlife, and extreme weather. They knew humans had evolved as persistence hunters who could chase prey for days without stopping. But the most chilling part was the recommendation at the bottom of the file: avoid at all costs. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Death world. Species cannot be enslaved and pose extreme risk to fleet operations. "The current Kreks leadership thinks their predecessors were cowards," Emma continued reading. "There are recent notes saying that no species could possibly be as dangerous as the old files claim. They're planning to test human defenses after they finish in this sector." Ryan activated the communication system immediately. Guardian 2. Solar Defense Command. Priority Alpha, Admiral Carter, we have a situation. The quantum communication link connected them instantly to Earth. Admiral Carter's image appeared on the screen, along with several other high-ranking officers. Ryan could see Dr. Lisa Park in the background, reviewing data from the Villani first. "Contact missions, report, Captain," Carter said tersely. "Sir, the Kreks fleet numbers over 300 ships. They've been systematically enslaving or destroying every species they encounter. We've recovered intelligence that shows they're planning to move against human space after they consolidate control of this region." Ryan transmitted the captured files to Earth. The room on the other end of the communication link erupted into activity as officers began analyzing the data. Dr. Park moved closer to Carter and whispered something urgent in his ear. "Captain." "How reliable is this intelligence?" Carter asked. "The data comes directly from Kreks military databases, sir." Emma verified it using multiple sources. "Admiral, they have detailed files on Earth. They know we're from a death world, but they're current. Leadership thinks the warnings are exaggerated." Carter was quiet for a long moment. Ryan could see the Admiral's mind working, calculating distances and fleet strengths. "Captain Walsh, return to Earth immediately. We're going to need every ship and every bit of intelligence you've gathered." The transmission ended, but Ryan could imagine the controlled chaos that was erupting at Solar Defense Command. Earth's military had always been designed to defend the home system. Now they faced an enemy that had spent decades building a massive war machine specifically designed to conquer other species back on Earth. Admiral Carter was already meeting with Colonel Matt Turner, the head of the Marine Space Combat Division. Matt was a veteran of the asteroid mining conflicts, a man who had learned to fight in the harshest environments humanity had ever entered. "Colonel," I need your Marines ready for boarding actions against ships 3 times the size of anything we've ever built, Carter said. These Kreks think they can enslave or destroy humanity. They're about to learn why every other species in the galaxy treats Earth as a forbidden zone. Matt grinned, the expression not entirely pleasant. His Marines had trained for years in conditions that would kill most aliens. Zero gravity, radiation, extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, these were just normal working conditions for Earth's military forces. How long do we have to prepare, Admiral? The Krek's fleet is moving toward human space. Based on their current position and speed, we have maybe 2 weeks before they reach our outer colonies, but we're not going to wait for them to arrive. We're going to meet them halfway. Carter activated the fleet-wide communication system. Across Earth's orbital shipyards and defense stations, red lights began flashing. The alert signal that humanity had hoped never to use was now echoing through space. Earth's Deathworld children were going to war. Image. Description for Leonardo AI, a sleek human destroyer spacecraft floating in a debris field of destroyed alien ships with organic, curved designs. The human ship has angular military features with glowing blue engines and weapon systems. Scattered wreckage floats around them in space, with twisted metal and crystalline fragments catching starlight. In the background, a massive alien fleet of dark, menacing warships approaches in the distance. The scene shows the contrast between the elegant, peaceful alien designs of the wreckage and the brutal efficiency of the attacking fleet. Stars and nebula clouds provide a dramatic backdrop to this scene of interstellar conflict. The orbital shipyards around Earth had never seen activity like this. Massive battleships that normally took months to prepare for deployment were being rushed into service in days. Admiral Ben Carter stood in the command center of the flagship, UTS Retribution, watching as his fleet assembled in formation. 85 warships were gathering in Earth's outer orbit, the largest military force humanity had ever put together. Carter checked his tactical display again. The first fleet was impressive by human standards, but they would be facing over 300 Kreks vessels. The numbers were not in their favor, but Carter had learned something important during his 40 years of military service. Numbers did not always decide battles. Training, technology, and determination often mattered more. Admiral, the UTS Vengeance, is reporting ready for departure, announced his communications officer. Carter nodded, watching as the massive battleship moved into position. The Vengeance was one of Earth's newest ships, equipped with experimental railgun systems that had never been tested in real combat. Captain Kate Sullivan commanded the Vengeance with the same steady confidence that had made her one of Earth's best officers. Her ship carried weapons that used Earth's high-gravity technology to accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. While most alien species used energy weapons, humans had developed kinetic systems that could punch through any known shield technology. Kate, how are your railguns performing? Carter asked over the communication link. All systems green, Admiral, Kate replied from her bridge. My crew has been drilling with these weapons for 6 months. We're ready to show the Kreks what Deathworld engineering looks like. Carter smiled grimly. The railguns were just one advantage the human fleet possessed. Earth's high gravity had forced humans to develop stronger materials and more efficient engines than most other species needed. What seemed like normal construction to humans was actually incredibly advanced technology to the rest of the galaxy. Colonel Matt Turner was aboard the assault carrier UTS Striker, preparing his Marines for the boarding actions that would likely decide the battle. His troops were training in conditions that would be lethal to most alien species. Zero-gravity combat while wearing full armor, fighting in damaged ships with no life support, operating in radiation levels that would kill unprotected aliens within minutes. Colonel, how are your men holding up? Carter asked during one of his regular check-ins. They're ready, Admiral, Matt replied. We've been running combat drills in simulated Krek ship environments. These aliens rely heavily on automated systems and slave labor. Once we get aboard their ships, they won't know how to handle troops who can operate in conditions that would kill their own crews. As the fleet continued its journey toward the Kepler 442 system, they encountered something unexpected. Refugee ships from other species that had fled Krex attacks were scattered throughout this region of space. Commander Alex Cole led a diplomatic team to make contact with these survivors, hoping to gather more intelligence about their enemy. The first refugee ship they encountered belonged to a species called the Feline. They were insect-like beings who had operated a peaceful mining collective until the Krex arrived. Their ship was barely holding together, packed with survivors who had escaped the destruction of their homeworlds. Commander Cole to Admiral Carter. Alex reported after spending several hours aboard the Feline vessel. "Sir, the intelligence we're gathering is disturbing. The Krex don't just conquer other species. They systematically break down their societies and rebuild them as slave states." The Feline refugees described Krex tactics in detail. They would attack civilian targets first to create terror, then demand surrender from the remaining population. Any species that resisted would be marked for complete extermination. Those who surrendered would be divided into useful and useless categories. The useful would become slaves. The useless would be killed. "There's something else, Admiral," Alex continued. "The Feline say the Krex have been asking questions about humans. They know we're coming and they're actually excited about it. They think defeating a Deathworld species will prove their superiority to the entire galaxy." Carter absorbed this information while reviewing the tactical situation. The Krex were not just confident, they were arrogant. They had spent so long defeating peaceful species that they had forgotten what it meant to face a real military force. Another refugee encounter provided even more valuable intelligence. The Zephyrians were an aquatic species whose water worlds had been completely drained by Krex terraforming equipment. Their leader, speaking through translation devices, provided detailed information about Krex ship construction and crew organization. "Their ships are built like floating cities," the Zephyrian explained to Commander Cole's team. "They rely on enslaved species to handle most ship operations. Their own people mainly serve as overseers and weapons operators. If you can disrupt their slave crews, their ships become much less effective." This intelligence gave Colonel Turner's Marines a new tactical approach. Instead of trying to capture entire ships, they could focus on liberating slave crews and turning the Krex ships' own populations against their masters. Dr. Lisa Park, who had joined the fleet to provide xenobiological expertise, made another important discovery. The Krex had significant physiological limitations. They were adapted to moderate gravity worlds and stable atmospheric conditions. The environmental variations that humans considered normal would be extremely stressful for Krex crews. "Admiral," Lisa reported during a senior staff meeting, "the Krex have never fought an enemy that can operate in extreme conditions. Our ships are built to handle radiation, gravity fluctuations, and atmospheric breaches that would disable Krex vessels. We can fight in conditions where they simply cannot function." As the human fleet approached the edge of the Kepler 442 system, they received one final transmission from the surviving Villani. The signal was very weak and filled with static, but Amy Rodriguez, now serving as the fleet's senior communications officer, managed to clean it up enough to understand the message. "Human friends," the Villani voice said, "we know you are coming. Our sensors detect your ships approaching. The Krex fleet is moving to execute their final assault on our remaining vessels. We estimate 6 hours before they finish destroying our convoy. We have perhaps 40 families still alive, mostly children and elderly. We cannot express our gratitude that you would risk so much for people you barely know. If you do not arrive in time, please know that we died with hope in our hearts." The transmission ended, leaving the human fleet in grim silence. Carter looked at his tactical display once more. 6 hours to cover the remaining distance to the battle zone. 6 hours to engage a fleet 4 times their size. 6 hours to prove that Earth's Deathworld children could protect those who could not protect themselves. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter," he announced on the fleet-wide communication channel. We are about to face an enemy that has spent years believing they are the strongest force in this galaxy. They have enslaved peaceful species and destroyed entire civilizations. They think that having superior numbers makes them invincible. They are about to learn what happens when you threaten the people under Earth's protection. All ships, prepare for combat. Let's show these creks why every civilized species in the galaxy treats Earth as forbidden territory. The human fleet accelerated toward the battle that would determine the fate of not just the Villani, but potentially every peaceful species in the galaxy. Image. Description for Leonardo AI: a massive human space fleet of 85 warships assembled in formation in deep space, with Earth visible in the background. The flagship UTS Retribution leads the formation, a massive battleship with angular military design and glowing blue engines. Surrounding it are destroyers, cruisers, and assault carriers, all with sleek metallic hulls and weapon systems. The ships have a distinctly human industrial aesthetic with heavy armor plating and visible railgun batteries. Smaller refugee ships with organic alien designs float nearby, contrasting with the intimidating human war machines. The scene shows the fleet moving through space with engine trails heading toward distant stars where battle awaits. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a pack of wolves emerging from the darkness. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the UTS Retribution, watching as his tactical display filled with enemy contacts. The Krek's fleet was even larger than their intelligence had suggested. Over 300 ships in a loose formation around the dying Villani convoy. "Admiral, we count 312 Krek's vessels," reported his tactical officer. "They're arranged in a standard blockade formation around the remaining Villani ships." Carter studied the enemy positions. The Kreks had clearly not expected any interference. Their ships were spread out to prevent the Villani from escaping, but this formation would be useless against an attacking fleet. The aliens had grown overconfident after years of facing only peaceful species. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Execute attack pattern Delta. We're going straight down their throats." Across the human fleet, captains received their orders with grim satisfaction. Attack pattern Delta was the most aggressive formation in Earth's tactical manual. Instead of forming defensive lines or trying to outmaneuver the enemy, the human ships would charge directly into the center of the Krek's fleet. Captain Kate Sullivan, aboard the UTS Vengeance, received the attack order and smiled coldly. Her battleship was built for exactly this kind of fight. "All stations, battle stations. Railgun batteries, prepare to fire on my command." The Vengeance led the human charge, its massive railguns already targeting the nearest Krek's battleship. The alien vessel was twice the size of any human ship, covered in energy shields that had protected it through dozens of previous battles. But those shields had never faced kinetic weapons moving at near light speed. "Railguns firing," announced Kate's weapons officer. The tungsten projectiles launched from the Vengeance's guns were invisible to the naked eye, but their impact was devastating. The Krek shields, designed to absorb energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The first salvo punched clean through the alien battleship's hull, causing internal explosions that lit up the darkness of space. "Direct hit," reported the tactical officer. "Enemy battleship is breaking apart?" The Krek's fleet reacted with confusion. Their sensors had detected the human attack, but they could not understand how their most powerful ship had been destroyed so quickly. Alarm signals spread through their formation as commanders tried to figure out what kind of weapons they were facing. Colonel Matt Turner was aboard the assault carrier UTS Striker, watching as his boarding pods launched toward damaged Krek's vessels. Each pod carried 12 Marines in full combat armor, trained to fight in conditions that would kill most alien species. "Boarding Team Alpha, you're clear for insertion," Matt announced over the communications channel. "Remember, these ships are built for slave labor. Find the enslaved crews and turn them loose." The first boarding pod crashed through the hull of a Krek's heavy cruiser. The Marines inside immediately began fighting their way toward the ship's control centers. The Krex crew, wearing environmental suits that limited their movement, found themselves facing humans who could operate perfectly in the damaged ship's toxic atmosphere. Sergeant Bob Miller led his squad through corridors filled with smoke and radiation. His armor systems showed radiation levels that would be lethal to unprotected humans, but the Marines had trained for these conditions. To them, this was just another day at work. "Contact front," Bob called out as a group of Krex soldiers appeared around a corner. The aliens were moving slowly in their bulky protective gear, while the humans moved with deadly efficiency. The firefight was brief and one-sided. The Krex weapons were designed for use in controlled environments. The human weapons had been built to function anywhere, from the vacuum of space to the crushing depths of Earth's oceans. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Walsh was leading a squadron of destroyers in hit-and-run attacks against the Krex formation. His ships darted between the larger enemy vessels, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid return fire while targeting critical systems. "Walsh to all destroyer units, focus on their communication arrays," Ryan ordered. "Let's blind them before they can coordinate a proper response." The human destroyers moved like sharks among whales, too fast for the Krex ships to target effectively. Their weapons struck precisely at communication dishes, sensor arrays, and command bridges. Within minutes, large sections of the Krex fleet were cut off from their central command. Back aboard the Retribution, Admiral Carter watched as the battle unfolded exactly as he had hoped. The Krex numerical advantage was meaningless when their ships could not coordinate with each other. "Amy, how are you doing with their communication networks?" Captain Amy Rodriguez, now serving as the fleet's electronic warfare specialist, was deep in her work at the intelligence station. "I'm inside their command network now, Admiral. Their security systems are designed to keep other Krex out, not humans. Our programming approaches are completely different from anything they've encountered." Amy had discovered that Krex computer systems were purely logical, designed to follow predictable patterns. Human programming, influenced by intuition and creative thinking, could bypass their security through methods the aliens had never considered. "I found something interesting," Amy announced. "They have control codes for all the slave crews throughout their fleet. If I can access these codes—" "Do it," Carter ordered immediately. Amy's fingers flew across her console, sending liberation commands throughout the Krex fleet. On hundreds of alien ships, enslaved crews suddenly found their control collars deactivated and their cell doors unlocked. Species that had been forced to serve the Krex for years suddenly had the chance to fight back. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Krex. Ships that had been functioning normally suddenly erupted in internal fighting. Enslaved Thelan workers sabotaged engine systems, captured Zephyrians' flooded compartments with toxic gases. Villani prisoners who had been forced to maintain weapon systems turned those same weapons against their captors. "Admiral, we're reading massive system failures throughout the enemy fleet," reported the tactical officer. "It looks like they're fighting each other." The tide of battle turned in minutes. Krex ships that had been threatening the human fleet suddenly found themselves dealing with revolts from within. Their crews, trained to oversee slaves rather than handle emergencies, could not cope with the chaos spreading through their vessels. Captain Kate Sullivan pressed her advantage, leading the human battleships deeper into the enemy formation. The Krex ships that were still operational tried to form defensive lines, but their crews were demoralized and confused. They had expected to face another peaceful species like the Villani. Instead, they were fighting enemies who seemed to thrive in the conditions that disabled their own ships. "This is Admiral Carter to all Krex vessels," Carter announced on all communication frequencies. "Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now and your surviving crews will be treated according to galactic conventions. Continue fighting and we will destroy every ship in your formation." The response came from the Krex fleet commander, his voice filled with rage and disbelief. "Impossible! No species from a single world could defeat the might of the Krex hegemony." "What are you?" "We are humans," Carter replied simply. "We come from Earth, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." The Krex fleet began surrendering in groups. Some ships tried to flee, but the human destroyers hunted them down with relentless efficiency. Within 4 hours of the battle's start, the largest military force the Kreks had ever assembled was either destroyed, captured, or fleeing toward their home territory. The surviving Villani ships, their crews barely alive after days of hiding from the Kreks, sent grateful messages to the human fleet. Their leader's voice was weak but filled with amazement as he transmitted to Admiral Carter. "Human friends, we cannot believe what we have witnessed. You have saved not just our people, but the enslaved crews of hundreds of ships. How can we ever repay such courage?" Carter looked out at the wreckage of the Kreks fleet, thinking about the peaceful species that would now be free. "Just remember this day," he replied, "and know that Earth stands ready to help any peaceful species that faces such threats." The Deathworlders had announced their presence to the Galaxy.image description for Leonardo AI, a massive space battle, seen with human warships charging through a formation of larger alien vessels. In the foreground, the angular human battleship UTS Vengeance fires brilliant blue railgun beams that pierce through the shields of a massive organic-looking Kreks battleship, causing spectacular explosions. Smaller human destroyers dart between larger enemy ships like wolves attacking a herd. In the background, small boarding pods launch from human carriers toward damaged alien vessels. The scene shows internal explosions throughout the Kreks fleet as slave revolts spread. Debris and weapon fire fill the space between fleets, with the distinctive blue-white trails of human kinetic weapons cutting through the darkness of space. The silence after the battle was almost as shocking as the fighting had been. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the UTS Retribution, looking out at the wreckage of what had once been the most powerful fleet in this region of the galaxy, broken. Krek ships drifted through space, their hulls torn open by railgun fire and internal explosions. The few surviving enemy vessels floated with their engines shut down, broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. "Admiral, we're receiving damage reports from all ships," announced his communications officer. "Total human casualties, 43 wounded, 7 killed." "No ships lost?" Carter nodded grimly. 7 brave souls had died to save thousands of innocent aliens. He would make sure their sacrifice was remembered. "What about the Kreks fleet?" "Sir, we count 112 Kreks ships destroyed, 87 captured, and the rest fled toward their home territory. We estimate over 50,000 enslaved aliens have been liberated from the captured vessels." The numbers told the story of a complete victory, but Carter knew the real work was just beginning. The human fleet now had responsibility for thousands of refugees from dozens of different species. They needed medical care, food, and transportation back to whatever homes they still had. Colonel Matt Turner was aboard one of the captured Kreks vessels, overseeing the liberation of enslaved crews. The conditions he found there made him sick with anger. Entire families had been separated and forced to work in dangerous areas of the ships. Children who should have been playing were operating mining equipment. Elderly beings who should have been cared for were cleaning toxic waste. "Systems." "Colonel Turner to Admiral Carter," Matt reported over the communication link. "Sir, the conditions on these ships are worse than we thought. Some of these people have been slaves for years. They're going to need extensive medical care and psychological support." Dr. Lisa Park had transferred to the largest captured Kreks vessel to begin treating the rescued aliens. Her medical team was working around the clock to help beings from species she had never encountered before. Each species had different medical needs, different dietary requirements, and different environmental preferences. "Admiral, I'm going to need more medical supplies," Lisa reported during one of her regular check-ins. "And we need to establish a proper refugee processing center. There are too many people here to handle with just our ship-based facilities." Carter had already been thinking about this problem. The Kepler 442 system had several planets that could support various forms of life. One of them would make an ideal location for a temporary refugee center while they figured out how to get everyone home. Captain Kate Sullivan volunteered the UTS Vengeance to escort the refugee ships to the selected planet. Her battleship's powerful sensors and weapons would provide protection while the former slaves began rebuilding their lives. "Admiral, my crew would consider it an honor to help these people," she said, as the human fleet began organizing the massive humanitarian effort. They received an unexpected visitor. A sleek ship appeared at the edge of the system, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all known frequencies. The vessel belonged to the Galactic Trade Consortium, a loose organization of peaceful species that facilitated commerce between different worlds. Ambassador Dale Richards, Earth's senior diplomat, transferred to the Retribution to meet with the alien representatives. The consortium delegates were a mixed group from several species, all of whom looked nervous as they approached the human fleet. "Admiral Carter," the lead delegate said through translation devices, "we represent over 40 peaceful species in this region of space. We came here expecting to negotiate for the release of prisoners from the Krex fleet. Instead, we find that you have completely destroyed them." Carter studied the aliens carefully. They seemed more amazed than afraid. "Our mission was to rescue the Villani and stop the Krex threat. We accomplished both objectives." "Admiral, you must understand," another delegate spoke up. "No single species has ever defeated a full Krex battle fleet. They have been expanding their territory for over a century. Dozens of civilizations have fallen to them. How did you manage this?" Carter exchanged glances with Ambassador Richards. This was exactly the kind of question they had been expecting. "We come from Earth. Our world taught us to adapt to extreme conditions and to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The consortium delegates spent 3 days observing the human relief efforts. They watched as human medical teams worked tirelessly to treat aliens from species they had never encountered. They saw human engineers rigging life support systems to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different beings. They observed human marines gently carrying injured children to safety while simultaneously securing dangerous areas of the damaged ships. "Your people are remarkable," the lead delegate finally told Carter. "We have never seen such efficiency combined with such compassion. The freed slaves speak of human soldiers who risked their lives to protect alien children." They had never met before. Word of the Battle of Kepler 442 spread quickly through galactic civilization. Species that had lived in fear of Krex expansion suddenly realized that the threat was gone. But more importantly, they learned that there was a new power in the galaxy. A species that had the strength to defeat any aggressor and the moral character to use that strength only to protect others. Captain Ryan Walsh led a squadron of destroyers to escort the surviving Villani ships back to their home system. The Villani leader, an elderly being named Corvash, could barely speak when he thanked the human captain. "Captain Walsh, our people will remember this forever," Corvash said, his musical voice filled with emotion. "You have shown us what true courage looks like. How can we ever repay such a debt?" "No debt," Ryan replied simply. "Friends help friends. That's all there is to it." The Villani offered to share their advanced medical technology with Earth as a gesture of gratitude. Their knowledge of biological systems would save countless human lives in the years to come. But more than that, they became Earth's first true allies in a galaxy that was suddenly looking at humanity with new eyes. Commander Amy Rodriguez established the first permanent human communication station in the Kepler 442 system. The facility would serve as a coordination center for refugee resettlement efforts and as a symbol of Earth's commitment to protecting peaceful species. "Admiral, we're receiving requests for protection from species across this entire sector," Amy reported. "Word has spread that humans will fight to defend peaceful civilizations." Carter knew that Earth's role in the galaxy had changed forever. They could not go back to being an isolated species focused only on their own system. The universe had too many threats and too many innocent people who needed protection. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Carter returned to Earth to address the Terran Council. The rescued aliens had been resettled, the captured Krex ships had been studied and scrapped, and a permanent Earth defense force had been established in the outer colonies. "The galaxy is watching us," Carter told the assembled leaders. "Every peaceful species now knows that Earth will stand against those who prey on the innocent. Every aggressive empire now knows that attacking peaceful civilizations means facing humanity's wrath. Captain Jake Harrison, promoted to admiral after his role in detecting the original Villani distress call, took command of the new Outer Rim Defense Force. His mission was simple: watch for threats against peaceful species and respond with overwhelming force when necessary. The Krek's hegemony never recovered from their defeat at Kepler 442. Their surviving ships limped back to their home territory, carrying news that shattered their empire's confidence. Other aggressive species throughout the galaxy received the same message. The age of easy conquest was over. Earth's Deathworld children had become the galaxy's protectors, and the universe would never be the same. In the years that followed, no aggressive species dared to attack peaceful civilizations without first asking themselves a simple question: what if the humans find out? It was a question that saved countless lives across the stars. Image description for Leonardo AI: a massive orbital station under construction in space above a habitable planet, with human ships and rescued alien vessels of various organic designs docked at different levels. Human engineers in spacesuits work alongside freed alien refugees to build the new facility. The station has a mix of human angular military architecture and flowing alien aesthetic elements. In the foreground, human medical ships tend to colorful alien vessels, while in the background the planet below shows temporary refugee settlements with diverse alien structures. Earth's flag flies prominently on the main station hub, with other species symbols arranged around it as equals. The scene shows cooperation and hope, with warm lighting suggesting a new dawn for galactic civilization.